Hello everyone and welcome to Inside the Quality Awards. My name is Ralph Peterson, and in this video we are going to go over question P1A6 of the Bronze Quality Award application. This is the regulatory question, and I'm going to tell you this is a question that gets a lot of applicants, a lot of people scratching their head going, what is the point of this question? I'm going to explain exactly what the point of this question is. I'm going to get to the heart of what the actual question is. And I'm going to help you understand exactly what it is we are looking for at the examiner level in your answer. So I'm going to show you how to exactly answer this question. In addition, I'm going to take a couple of extra minutes to also share a connection with you, because this question actually impacts the silver and the gold application at the next levels. And even if you're not thinking silver and gold right now, this question actually has huge implications in QAPI, in your QAPI programs, QAPI programs. I know you're probably looking at it like, how is this possible that this has anything to do with QAPI? I will explain it. And as a little added bonus, because I think this is a really great place to bring this up, I'm also going to discuss with you ways that you could utilize this application, this document that you're creating, in other ways. This is not just, it does not only need to be just an application for a Bronze Quality Award. In fact, I would argue that this document, once you complete it, this document could be an important, invaluable tool you could use to onboard managers. That's right. This could be a management development tool. I think it's fantastic. Let's get into it. P1A6, here we go. Okay, here we are, P1A6 of the Bronze Quality Award, the regulatory environment. First thing that I want you to notice is there are actually 3 questions. The second thing I want you to notice is that they're all what questions. What, here's number 1, what are your key applicable regulation requirements? What, here's number 2, are your key applicable accreditation requirements? And then what, here's number 3, are your key certification requirements? Now, there's 3 parts to each one of these questions that I think is important to address before we can actually figure out how to answer these questions. Let me try to make it like this. So I'm going to make a little grid here. Maybe they're buckets, who knows? And we'll do it like this and like this. Okay, a little 9-square grid. So before we get into, let's just start with the first one. What are your key regulation requirements? Before I can answer that question for us, I have to know who the heck we're even talking about. So I like to ask first, who? Who regulates, in our case, senior care, in assisted living, IDDD homes, right? Skilled nursing. Who regulates us? Well, we can say, we know CMS regulates us. We know the Department of Health, the Department of Labor, Life Safety, OHCA. If you have a state association, I don't know if you know you do, I do too. We have an NYS, New York State, DOH, right? So these are all the regulatory bodies that regulate us, right? Now, what does that actually mean? What does it mean to be regulated? And what does it mean by requirements? So first, let's do the regulated. Regulation in this context, just so we're all on the same page, these are the laws, the rules that you have to abide by. You have to abide by. Listen to that word, abide, comply, adhere, follow. Follow. These are, you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. You have to comply with all of these regulations in order to operate, right? So then, once we understand that who is, we're talking about CMS, Department of Labor, Department of Health, OHCA, Life Safety, and these are laws, rules that we have to comply with, we have to adhere to, we have to follow. Now we can talk about the requirements. And what are some of the requirements that CMS, Department of Health, OHCA, Department of Labor, what do they require us to do? Well, that depends on which actual department or regulatory body we are talking about. If we're talking about CMS, well, CMS requires us to provide a safe and effective environment for residents. to maintain proper staffing levels, to complete accurate assessments, to follow care planning requirements, to prevent abuse and neglect, and comply with infection control standards, like that kind of thing. If we are talking about the Department of Health, well, then we're talking about state-specific standards. We're talking about making sure that you pass surveys. Like a requirement is that you be survey ready, like you report incidences, that you meet all the requirements, all the state level requirements. If we're talking about OSHA, then OSHA regulations always about safety for workplace. So it's workplace and safety, including training and protective equipment and all that kind of thing. If we're talking about HIPAA, then we're talking about resident health information. If we're talking about Department of Labor, then we're talking about tracking and paying people properly and overtime rules and all that stuff. So the requirements are always it depends on which regulatory you're talking about. And keep in mind, we're asking you about key. Key means most important. Most important. And so if you were to bring up, if you're looking for like, well, how many things should I bring up? I mean, my magic number for key is 1 to 3. Oops. What happened here? Come on, my iPad. Hold on. There we go. Sometimes when I try to write at the top, it doesn't work. Most important, for me, you probably have 1 to 3 key applicable regulations that you're following, regulatory bodies that you are adhering to. CMS seems like a pretty big deal, right? But so does the Department of Health. So does the Department of Labor. So does OSHA. I'm just simply saying you don't have to list 4, 5, 6 of them. Listing 1, 2, 3 of them would be enough, but it's not enough to just, we're not looking for a list. Keep that in mind. We're not looking for a list because this is not a who question. It's not who are you regulated by. It's what are your key requirements? What are their requirements for you to follow? With that in mind, the way that I would invite you to consider answering this question is like this. Our organization or XYZ nursing home or we are required to comply or adhere. I don't know why I keep trying to put the H in front of the D. Adhere, or we're required to follow all state and federal regulations related to, and then you can list some things. What are listing some of the key requirements? Resident care, quality, infection control, safety, staffing, compliance, life safety, medication management. Does that make sense? So then you would list listing the requirements is the answer, not listing the who. I would also include the who. I would say, our organization or XYZ nursing home is required to comply with federal and state regulations by OSHA, CMS, Department of Health, and the key requirements include this, and this. Make sense? Okay. Let's move on to number 2. Number 2, another who part. Now, number 2, not so much number 3, but number 2 is possible that your answer is NA, meaning we don't have any accreditations. But let's first talk about what accreditations are. Accreditations are, so who, first of all, the most common one for who is the Joint Commission, JCAHO. Joint Commission is one of the most popular accreditations, but you could be accredited by like the American Heart Association. Like there's a bunch of them. But the big thing is that when it comes to the accreditation, so this one is regulation, this is the accreditation. Accreditation, come on. When it comes to accreditation, that's an interesting way of saying it. This is voluntary. Voluntary. You do not have to be accredited with JCAHO. You do not have to be accredited with the American Heart Association. You want to be. And if you've chosen to be, well, then there are standards. Standards that you have to adhere to in order to maintain that accreditation. And so now we're asking you, what are the key requirements of your accreditations? And quite honestly, when it comes to accreditations, especially like for a joint commission or even the Heart Association or CARF, C-A-R-F, which is the rehab, it's usually the requirements are performance-based. You have to maintain a quality level. You have to pass a test. You have to have a survey. You have to have a certain rating number. Like it's always based, usually, not always, it's usually based on safety, leadership, quality, continuous improvements, performance standards. But there are things that you have to adhere to. You have to maintain. And so again, what we'd want, the way that we would be answering the question is either A, we don't have any accreditations, which is reasonable, or B, we are accredited through JCO or the American Heart Foundation or whatever, and the key requirements are certain quality ratings, certain whatever the actual requirements are. Finally, that brings us to certifications. Certifications. And again, we're going to start backwards with who, and then we're going to go forwards and we're going to talk about the actual requirements of certification. Now, one of the most common, of course, is a repeat here, and it is CMS. We are all required to be certified, our homes to be certified, through CMS, Medicare, and Medicaid. You could add them both. That it makes sense that it would be here in the certifications, and it also makes sense that it would be at the regulations. It could be at either one of those. But not only that, but there might be some dietary certification requirements, and there might be some staff license certification requirements. That's supposed to be an S. Certification requirements. So that's the who, right? And this is something I want to point out. Let me change the color of my pen here real quick. What I want to point out is regulations. The regulations are laws. You have to abide by them. Accreditations are voluntary, and they are always standards, right? So regulations are laws that we don't have a choice. Accreditations are voluntary. We do have a choice. But certifications are like accreditations, or regulations, in that they too are mandatory. They too are mandatory. And they are earned. They're earned, they're formal, and they are mandatory. So keep in mind, like I said before, the only one that you could, when you're answering this question, you could say that as far as accreditations go, you could say NA, like we have no accreditation requirements because you're not accredited with JCO or American Heart Association or anything like that. You wouldn't say that about regulations because of course you are regulated by CMS, DOH, DOL, that kind of thing. And you would also not be able to say it about certifications. All of us have some certification requirements, of course. And so it just makes sense that you will answer the regulation and the certification, and the accreditation is a crapshoot, whether or not you actually have any accreditations. So now let's move on to the requirements. What are the requirements? Well, just like we talked about with the requirements for regulations, it depends. It depends on the organization. CMS has different requirements. What are some of the key requirements for CMS? You have to be in good standing as far as like surveys. You have to have surveys every year or every 2 years if you're assisted living. Whatever the certification, to get recertified, these are the things you have to do. For dietary, most of our dietary managers, in my experience, have to have a CDM, or they have to be certified dietary managers. That is something that they earn. It is a class that they take. And then they have to take extra classes every year, and they have to renew that CDM every year, every 2 years. I don't know what the regulation is, but there are some requirements where it's not just a one and done. Same with our CNAs, our certified nursing assistants. They have to too get recertified, I think every 2 years. They also have to get continuing education credits, so many hours of continuing education. Our administrators, our DONs, our nurses, they all have to have these certification requirements, education requirements are ongoing. There might even be a fee, like you have to renew every 2 years. Maybe there's a requirement that you not have any charges against you. You have to have a good standing with a good criminal history. You can't have a criminal history or something. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, there's all kinds of, depending on which organization we're looking at is going to dictate what those requirements are. And so once again, the way that you would answer this question is first, just like I'm doing here, I would build myself a little grid. I'd go, okay, who regulates us? And then what does it mean to regulate? It means we have to, the regulations there, it's by law that we're required to abide, comply, adhere, whatever. And what are those requirements? And I would only list out 1, 2, 3, 4 actual requirements, because we're talking about key, most important. And then I would answer each question independently. XYZ nursing homes, key regulation requirements through CMS, DOH, DOL include this, and this. Our key accreditations, or we don't have any accreditations, or our key accreditations, we are accredited through the Joint Commission, and our key requirements are performance, and they're always performance-based. And then good standing, whatever. And then our key certifications are key certification requirements from, and then I would name the who, CMS, dietary, staffing licensor, and then name 1, 2, 3, 4 of the key, most important requirements for that one as well. So for each one of these questions, you're going to be answering the same question. Now, I said in the beginning that I wanted to make the connection between this question and further in the application. Actually, the section is 6.1. 6.1, just for your notes, you can put that down later because we're not clearly going on question 6.1 because we're at the bronze, not the silver. In the gold, 6.1 is the same, 6.1A at the silver, 6.1 at the gold. But also with QAPI. And I'm just going to give you a quick little breakdown of QAPI. So I just want to show you that QAPI, I'm going to split them down the middle because QA is a past view, performance improvement is a future view, and so they are generally considered two meetings. If you have questions about that, I have videos on QAPI you can go and watch. But when we are in the performance improvement side, one of the steps of performance improvement is to do a root cause analysis or an evaluation. We do a root cause analysis when we're reacting to a problem. We do evaluations when we're proactively looking at a process instead of a problem. But either way, we are always going to end up coming we're going to end up having to consider, and we're going to have to make a bunch of considerations. And those considerations, because we're trying to come up with a new action plan. When you're trying to come up with a new plan and how you're going to solve the problem that you've discovered, you have to consider customer expectations, financial viability, staffing levels, staffing education, and of course, any accreditation requirements, regulation requirements, certification requirements. Like, we couldn't just go, oh, I know how to solve the problem. We're going to promote the CNA to an RN. Well, you can't just promote a CNA to an RN, right? There are regulation requirements. There are certification requirements, right? So that's what I mean by this question. It's so super important, so helpful to know how this question actually interacts with not only further in the application, but also with our QAPI meetings, our QAPI process. This is a big deal. It's very important to know. Now, finally, the last thing I want to talk about on this applicant, not just in section P1A6, which is what we're working on here, but also with the entire bronze application, I would invite you to consider that this document can be a living document that can really, really do good, really help you out, help your organization out. If you use it, if you turn it into a onboarding document for your management team, brand new managers, existing managers, this document will contain, at the end of it, when we're done, you're going to see it'll contain who our customers are, who what our customers want, who our key most important vendors are, what we get from those key most important vendors, what our competitive market looks like, how we solve a problem, what are some of our key strategic challenges and advantages, what our mission and our vision is. I mean, this document could really, really be the big difference maker in whether or not your your leadership team is on the same page or not on the same page. This is far more than just an application for the bronze. This is the beginning of creating a systematic process to onboard your leadership team and move effectively, proactively towards silver and ultimately to that gold level. All right, I hope you found this helpful. Let's look at the next question.